Planes are designed to take us further and faster than we can travel by train, car, or boat. They're incredible machines that have allowed the human race to take to the sky like birds. What happens when they reach the end of their usefulness, though? What happens when they're no longer fit for purpose and become abandoned? Watch this video to find out, and we'll show you some stunning examples. The first plane will be a familiar sight to anyone who's ever driven down the Pavlovsky Highway in Barnaul, Russia. It's a Tu-154B1 aircraft, which was built back in 1975 and started its working life at the Moscow Sheremetyevo Airport. By 1979, it had become the property of the Ukrainian Civil Aviation Administration and carried on dutifully, taking to the skies until 1996, when it was retired by Altai Airlines. Even though it looks completely abandoned, it still welcomes visitors occasionally. It's used for training airfield service officers and rescue teams. Apparently, the people who currently own it are planning to carry on using it until it simply falls apart, which, based on the sorry state it's in, might not be in the all-too-distant future. Strangely, despite spending its last 3 years in the service of Altai Airlines, it's still decked out in the livery of Aeroflot. Some local residents want to see it installed as a permanent monument in front of the Barnaul Airport, a fitting honor for a plane with such a long service history. What's better than one abandoned old plane? A whole collection of them, all grouped together for the paying public to come and see. This is the collection of airplanes from the past at the Pima Air and Space Museum in Tucson, Arizona, USA. There are over 300 aircraft exhibited at this site, many of which have been given special, colorful livery to bring the tired old machines to life. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner is considered to be the star of the show by many, although there's also a F-14, which is identical to the model flown by Tom Cruise in the legendary movie Top Gun. Outdoors, there's a collection of old B-52s and a Blue Angels FA-18 Hornet. The museum has been open since 1976 and acquires a few more planes with each passing year. There's even a wooden Wright Flyer at the entrance of the museum's main hangar, although this is a replica as opposed to the original model. Restaurateurs are always looking for a way to make their eateries stand out from the crowd, and whoever opened this one in Seoul, South Korea, thought they had the perfect attraction to bring people in to eat at their premises. It's the Wanti Trip Jumbo Jet, which is still just about recognizable from the markings on its livery. It's in no condition to take to the skies ever again, though, which is something of a sad end for a plane that was once the pride of Pan Am's fleet after it was built in 1970. After it was retired in 1999, it was bought by a wealthy South Korean couple who cut it into pieces and turned the innards into a kitchen and lounge. It was supposed to be a desirable and exclusive restaurant, but the idea never really caught on with the locals. The business failed a few years after it opened, and the shabby remnants of the plane have been rusting and degrading ever since. Parts of the interior still give you an idea of how beautiful it must have once looked. Seen from above, this looks like nothing more than a rusting old hulk embedded on a beach. But there's so much more to the story than that. This is a B-2 4D Liberator with military history. Built in San Diego, USA in 1943, it saw action during the Second World War as part of the 5th Air Force 43rd Bombardment Group, but sadly didn't stay in service for even a full 12 months. It encountered bad weather on its way back from a bombing mission in August 1943 and was forced to make a diversion. Despite the best efforts of the pilot, the Liberator simply didn't have enough fuel to make it all the way back to base. With no other options, the pilot ditched the plane in an inlet off the coast of New Guinea. It skidded across the water and came to rest in the mud, breaking off its tail in the process, but keeping its wings straight. The wreckage has been there ever since, and it's still visible during low tide. Not every World War II era plane that was lost during the war years went down because of a battle incident. Some of them were simply the victims of accidents. That was the case for the Douglas SBD Dauntless that spent 65 years below the waters of Lake Michigan after it crashed there during a training exercise in 1944. It was far from being alone in the vast lake. Experts believe that there may be as many as 300 planes down there. Despite spending such an extended time in the lake, the Dauntless is still in reasonable condition. It's hoped that a restoration team might be capable of making it fly again, or at least clean it up enough to put it on display. Even the wooden antenna was still intact, although a thick coating of barnacles made the whole thing look like a coral reef. The propeller, wings, and tail fin also survived the impact with the water. It looks almost as if it was delicately placed into the water deliberately. We don't know whether to call this AN-72 military transport plane Anushka or Cheburashka. Planes of this type went by both nicknames during their years of operation between 1982 and 1993. With the engine placement being important to the name given, what we can tell you for certain is where this plane will stand until it falls to pieces. It's in Samara, Russia. The last time it took to the air was 2010, when a small fire on the plane forced it into an emergency landing. The landing was executed safely, and it came down just outside Smyslavsky Airport. Unfortunately, the airport was in financial difficulty and had no money to tend to or repair the stricken plane. A short time later, it went out of business, and so the plane has been left behind, waiting for someone to come and repair the damage and take it away. At the time of the fire, it belonged to the FSUE Design Bureau of Automatic Systems. Why they've never come to reclaim it themselves is unknown. The discovery of this P-38 fighter in Greenland marked the end of a great mystery of aviation. It's part of the infamous Lost Squadron, which were flying over Greenland when they disappeared during a blizzard in 1942. The skilled pilots managed to land safely and were rescued, but when a crew returned later to retrieve the 6 P-38s and 2 B-17 Flying Fortresses which made up the squadron, they disappeared under the snow and ice. The first of the missing planes, another P-38, was found in 1992, but the fact that it appeared to be on its own only deepened the mystery. It wasn't until 2018 that the second P-38, which is known as Echo, was located using advanced drilling technology. The ice has preserved the vehicle perfectly, and thanks to the use of heat plate equipment to melt through the 3 feet of snow and ice which covered it, it's now been possible to extract the plane for restoration. It might even still be capable of flight. There had been rumors for years that an old German World War II plane had come down in the forest of Kurishi, Russia. We now know that those rumors are true, and it only took 2 bottles of vodka to prove it. A team of aviation enthusiasts ventured into the forest in search of the fallen FockeWulf FW-190 in 1991 and came across a hunter who was familiar with the secrets of the land. After they presented him with their vodka bribe, he took them straight to the site where the plane had been standing since 1943. Despite showing the scars of battle, the FockeWulf wasn't badly damaged, and so it's thought it was ditched in an emergency landing rather than shot down. An American investor took an interest in the story after it made the press. He paid off the team who found it, had it shipped across the sea to the United States of America, and is now in the process of having the plane fully restored. Perhaps this is another once-forgotten plane that might one day fly again. We have background information about most of the abandoned planes in this video, but not all of them. In all honesty, nobody seems to know how or why a Tupolev Tu-134 came to be left outside Riga Airport in Skolte, or why the local authorities have been content to leave it where it is for so many years. We do know the young people of the local area are very grateful for its presence, though. They've turned it into an unconventional nightclub. 3 decades parked on wasteland have meant that anything that might have been valuable inside the plane has long since been scavenged. But that just leaves more place for people to party. When raves happen in here, sound systems and light displays are installed, which make the old Tupolev shine brightly, almost as brightly as the psychedelic paint scheme which has been applied to the exterior. The parties are technically illegal, but it seems the local authorities are happy to turn a blind eye so long as everybody behaves, and nobody gets hurt. There are definitely worse ways for old planes to be put to use. During the peak years of the Soviet Union, innovation and experimentation were constant. One of the main objectives of the military during the 1970s was to build a reliable seaplane, and the Loon-class Ekranoplan was supposed to fulfill that purpose. On a basic level, it was a success. The seaplane was commissioned in 1975, built in 1987, and remained in service until the end of the 1990s. That suggests it worked well and was suited to its purpose. Sadly, it was the only plane of its class ever built, and when it was retired, no replacement was ever ordered. The Loon was a triumph of engineering. The massive wings generated a ground effect which allowed it to fly as low as 12 feet above the water, driven along by 8 turbofans, which allowed a top speed of 320 miles per hour. When it was decommissioned, it was taken to Kaspiysk and remains at the naval station there. Seemingly superior to both hovercraft and hydrofoils at moving across and above water, the failure to make more Loon-class Ekranoplans feels like a missed opportunity. The Loon-class Ekranoplan wasn't the only Soviet-era attempt at making a seafaring plane. It might not have even been the most spectacular. We reserve that honor for the bereaved VVA-14, which was the brainchild of legendary Italian designer Robert Bartini. The idea behind the hulking plane was that it would be just as capable of taking and landing off from water as it would be from land, and therefore could be adapted for either purpose. What the military really wanted was a plane that could fly high enough to take out enemy submarines, but also low enough to do battle in the sky. Bartini's design was capable of taking off and landing from the land without any issues, but making it work the same way on the water proved to be more problematic. The 1972 prototype had pontoons that were supposed to make water landings easy, but they were too rigid and weren't up to the task. Bartini passed away in 1974 before he could make a second prototype, and the bereaved VVA-14 was abandoned. It's now a curious exhibit at the Soviet Central Air Force Museum. Happily, some retired planes get a happier ending than being mothballed or left in forests. This Boeing 720 is technically in a forest, but it's far from mothballed. In fact, there's someone living inside it. It's become the permanent home of an eccentric American millionaire, Bruce Campbell, who bought it for $100,000 in 1999 and had it brought to a plot of land he owns in Oregon. He's been as faithful as he can to the original furnishings and fittings inside the plane, while at the same time adapting them a little to make them more comfortable for him to live inside. His permanently stationed private plane has quite a history. Jackie Onassis was once a passenger, and she was just one of many well-heeled guests over the years. If you're curious about it, you can even contact Campbell on his personal website and book yourself a tour. He's now looking for a similar plane to renovate in Japan so he can split his time between the two locations. Maybe planes are the homes of the future. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.